Hello, and welcome to Introduction to Psychology. In today's session, we will continue our exploration of consciousness. In the last session, we looked at coma, vegetative state, and sleep. In this session, we will look at ordinary wakefulness and alternative wakefulness. Ordinary wakefulness is the normal state of consciousness when awake. It is the period of time when awareness is naturally at its highest. While awake and relaxing, people's brains display alpha wave activity. Neurons fire with a low amplitude and a fast frequency of about 8 to 12 hertz. While awake and thinking, people's brains display beta wave activity. Neurons fire with a very low amplitude and a very fast frequency of about 13 to 38 hertz. It should be noted that we are only aware of the things that we attend to. For example, previously you were probably not aware of the feelings in your toes. Now, however, you are aware of it because you are attending to those physical sensations. Similarly, previously you were probably not conscious of what you had for breakfast. Now, however, this information has come into your mind because you are attending to your memory. It is also true that the more we attend to things, the more aware we become of them. For example, if you casually regard a tree, you might notice its trunk, branches, and leaves. However, if you really concentrated on it, you would notice the colors of the leaves, the texture of the bark, and the shape of its canopy. This ability of ours to selectively attend to things prevents us from being overloaded with information. If we paid equal attention to everything, then our brains would become overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data. The final state of consciousness that we will look at is altered wakefulness. Altered wakefulness, also known as non-ordinary wakefulness, is transformed wakefulness. It is unusual wakefulness. There are numerous states of altered wakefulness. The trance state is characterized by minimal awareness of and responsiveness to the outside world. This is accompanied by a disturbed sense of time. It is induced by being intensely focused on, being absorbed by something. We are all familiar with the trance state. We have all been entranced by TV. When we are captivated by a program, we tend to have little awareness of what is going on around us. For example, we might not notice someone entering the room. We tend not to respond to other stimuli. For example, we might not answer if someone talks to us. And after the program ends, the time seems to have flown by. Similarly, many of us have been entranced by driving. When we are staring intently at the road ahead, we tend to have little awareness of other stimuli. For example, we might not notice an exit ramp. We tend not to respond to other stimuli. For example, we might not slow down at a hazard sign. And when we finally break out of our reverie, we wonder where the time went. Some people can enter the trance state more easily than others. Imaginative, intelligent individuals find it particularly easy. The trance state is made use of by therapists and sometimes stage performers to increase suggestibility. Hypnotherapists typically put people into a trance by having them focus on something and then soothing them into a relaxed state. For example, getting clients to stare at a fixed spot and engaging in progressive muscle relaxation, or having them focus on a soothing sound and engaging in countdown breathing. Some people are more entrancable than others. People who want to be entranced and find it easy to go into a trance are good candidates. It is impossible to entrance someone against their will. It should be noted that methods such as shock and surprise are sometimes used by unscrupulous stage performers. Shocking people can leave them in a stunned state. This stunned state is very similar to the trance state. That is, stunned people are not really sure what is going on, and time seems to slow down for them. The technique, for example, going to shake someone's hand, but instead of shaking it, yanking it forcefully towards you, is open to abuse, as it is quite possible to stun anyone, even against their will. And while they are briefly in this stunned state, suggestions can be made to them. Suggestibility is the tendency to have one's thoughts, sensations, or actions influenced purely by the presentation of an idea. Reacting to a suggestion automatically is known as the ideodynamic response. For example, when asked to imagine sucking a lemon, many people cannot stop themselves from salivating. Some individuals are naturally more suggestible than others. Suggestibility can be assessed using the Gudjonsson suggestibility scale. Participants read a story and are then asked leading questions about the story. The misinformation effect, having one's memory distorted by post-event information, is another example of the power of suggestion. As stated previously, the trance state is made use of by therapists and sometimes stage performers to increase suggestibility. Suggestions made to people who have been hypnotized, people who have been lulled into a trance, tend to be slightly more effective than suggestions made to people who haven't been hypnotized. It is not clear why this is the case. Some people claim that a relaxed, entranced mind simply accepts suggestions rather than fighting against them. Other people claim that it has nothing to do with being entranced at all. People's suggestibility might be increased simply because the suggestions are being made by a respected person, the therapist. Increased suggestibility might even be a placebo effect. People might just believe that hypnotherapy will work, and so it does. With stage hypnotism, people might just go along with suggestions because they don't want to ruin the show or because they enjoy the attention. We can attempt a simple hypnotism exercise. Stare at something above eye level without tilting your head upwards. Breathe deeply with a long, slow exhale. And count backwards from 20 on each out breath. As you feel your eyes getting heavier, simply close them. Hold your arms out in front of you with the palms of your hands upwards. Now imagine that you are holding a heavy bowling ball in your left hand and you have a large helium balloon tied to your right wrist. Really concentrate on how it would feel to have the bowling ball pushing your left arm down and the helium balloon pulling your right arm up. Now, open your eyes and look at the relative position of your two arms. If one is higher than the other, it doesn't matter which way around, then you have been influenced by the power of suggestion. You have either directly followed the suggestion, in which case your left arm will be lower than the right, Or you have deliberately tried to ignore the suggestion and overcompensated, in which case your right arm will be lower than your left. Either way, you will have been induced to move your arm merely because you have been given the idea. A second altered state is the meditative state. The meditative state is a mentally clear and emotionally calm state induced by the practice of meditation. That is, it is a state of sharpened focus and serenity achieved via intentional contemplation. The practice of meditation calms the body and quietens the mind. Meditation involves focusing attention on a single point of reference. Meditators try to concentrate on one particular thing and turn their attentions back to that thing whenever they notice that their minds are wandering. The point of reference can be a current experience, a mantra, an intention, or an image. A current experience might be one's breathing, the sights, sounds, and smells in the world around you, one's current bodily sensations, one's current actions, or one's current emotions. Focusing entirely on the current moment, being purely present in the now, requires people to be mindful, to pay attention to, but not to judge the present moment. For example, to be aware of bodily sensations, but not to assess the agreeableness of those sensations. That is, to notice things without drifting off into thought. Mantras are sounds, words, phrases, affirmations, or benevolent wishes. For example, Om, peace, Hari Rama, Hari Krishna, I am strong, or may you be happy. Meditators repeat mantras either out loud or in their heads, and this prevents their minds from drifting off into thought. Meditators might also focus on an imagined image, for example, imagining breathing in a purifying white light and breathing out dark negative energy. Or they might focus on an intention such as, today I will be kind. Meditation has been shown to have many benefits. Meditation improves concentration. Practicing focusing on a single point of reference increases one's ability to fully attend to just one thing. Meditation increases our ability to resist distraction, to resist mind wandering. Meditation improves power of observation. Practicing focusing on a single point of reference improves our ability to notice detail. We get better at spotting the finer characteristics of the world around us, our bodily sensations, and our emotions. Meditation improves self-awareness. Practicing focusing on a single point of reference, such as our current emotions, improves our ability to recognize our current emotional state. Practicing focusing on other things improves our ability to notice when we are becoming distracted, when our minds are wandering. Meditation also improves mental health. Sitting quietly and breathing deeply calms the body. It activates the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. And focusing on a single point of reference provides relief from troubling thoughts, such as all the things we have to do, what could happen in the future, or what has happened in the past. Similarly, focusing on affirmations, such as I am strong, or images, such as picturing oneself radiating light, improves one's self-image. Hence, meditation reduces stress, anxiety, and the likelihood of depression. The hallucinatory state is the state of experiencing perception in the absence of any sensory stimulation. That is, it is seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, or feeling things that don't actually exist. For example, hearing voices even though there is no one talking to you. Hallucinations arise when people fail to distinguish between top-down, internally generated, and bottom-up, externally generated information. That is, when people imagine things so intensely that they mistake the envisaged things for actual real things. Imagination becomes so vivid that it is misconstrued as reality. There are numerous types of hallucination. Hypnagogic hallucinations occur just before falling asleep. About 30% of people experience them regularly. Peduncular hallucinations typically occur in dark environments. Only people with brain damage to the peduncle structure in the brain experience them. Dopaminergic, serotonergic hallucinations are experienced by people with elevated levels of these neurotransmitters. This might be due to drug ingestion, or it might be due to brain anomaly. Sensory deprivation hallucinations occur when individuals have been in dark or quiet environments for a long period of time. For example, people in sensory deprivation tanks often experience visual hallucinations. The intoxicated state is the state experienced when a person's normal capacity to think, feel, and/or act has been influenced by psychoactive substances. Psychoactive substances are chemical substances that change brain functioning and result in an alteration of perception, mood, consciousness, or behavior. There are numerous types of psychoactive substances. One way of classifying substances is to categorize them according to their effects. This is generally useful as most psychoactive substances only have one effect. However, the system is not perfect, as some substances, such as marijuana, have multiple effects. Hallucinogens are substances that alter perception. That is, they alter the way we see, hear, taste, feel, or smell things. They do this by influencing the release and reuptake of neurotransmitters. Examples of hallucinogens include LSD and mescaline, which elevate levels of serotonin, and PCP, which disrupts the action of glutamate. Marijuana, which influences dopamine levels, also has hallucinatory effects. Analgesics are substances that kill pain. Different analgesics achieve this in different ways. Opioids, such as oxycodone, heroin, and morphine, kill pain by raising endorphin levels, the body's natural pain-killing hormones. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, such as Advil, Motrin, and aspirin, kill pain by inhibiting the production of the COX enzyme. The COX enzyme is produced by damaged cells. Acetaminophen, paracetamol, is believed to kill pain by disrupting the action of the COX enzyme on the brain. Marijuana, which affects the body's endocannabinoid system, also has pain-killing effects. Stimulants are substances that speed up mental activity and physical activity by increasing neural activity in the central nervous system. That is, they increase the rate of neural firing. They do this by increasing levels of excitatory neurotransmitters such as glutamate and norepinephrine. Examples of stimulants include cocaine, amphetamines, and caffeine. Depressants are substances that slow down mental activity by decreasing neural activity in the central nervous system. That is, they decrease the rate of neural firing. They do this by increasing levels of inhibitory neurotransmitters such as GABA and serotonin. Examples of depressants include alcohol and sedatives. It should be noted that one area of the brain particularly affected by alcohol is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is involved in deciding when we should or shouldn't act. It weighs up the pros and cons of potential actions. When activity in the prefrontal cortex is decreased, the ability to weigh up the potential consequences of actions is diminished. This is why people become less inhibited, often engaging in reckless and inappropriate behavior after drinking. Another area of the brain particularly affected by alcohol is the cerebellum. The cerebellum is involved in balance and coordination. When activity in the cerebellum is decreased, movement becomes clumsy. This is why people become ungainly and bumbling after drinking. Prolonged use of psychoactive substances can have serious consequences. Tolerance is requiring greater dosages of a substance to achieve the same effect. For example, a first-time drinker might only need one drink to feel drunk, while a frequent drinker might need several. Tolerance develops because the nervous system adapts to the substance. It gets better and better at burning it off. Hence, greater quantities are needed to get an effect. Note, xenobiotics are substances foreign to the body. Xenobiotic metabolism is breaking down and eliminating these substances. Withdrawal is experiencing painful or unpleasant physical symptoms after ceasing or cutting down on consumption of a substance. For example, a regular heroin user might experience cold flashes and goosebumps, known as cold turkey, and muscle pain if they go without the drug. Withdrawal symptoms are caused by homeostatic overcompensation by the endocrine system. The endocrine system attempts to keep bodily conditions at optimal levels. It attempts to make sure we are ideally nourished, ideally hydrated, ideally warm, etc. Some psychoactive substances disrupt bodily conditions. For example, heroin makes people feel warmer and less sensitive to pain. So while heroin is in the system, the endocrine system is trying very hard to cool down the body and increase sensitivity to pain. It cannot do this while heroin is in the system. However, as soon as heroin is out of the system, when the user stops taking it, it can. But because the system is still trying very hard to cool down the body and increase sensitivity to pain, even though it doesn't need to try to do so now, it ends up reducing temperature and increasing sensitivity too much. Hence, the person feels cold and achy. Dependence is being reliant on a substance. Physiological dependence is relying on a substance to prevent withdrawal symptoms. Psychological dependence is relying on a substance to provide pleasure. There is often an overlap between the two. Sometimes a substance is relied upon both to avoid withdrawal and to provide pleasure. Either kind of dependence can lead to substance use disorder, also known as addiction, which is uncontrolled use of a substance despite it having harmful consequences. The dependence potential of substances varies. Heroin use is highly likely to lead to both physiological and psychological reliance. Hence, users are highly likely to get addicted. Alcohol use is moderately likely to lead to both physiological and psychological reliance. Hence, users are moderately likely to get addicted. Ecstasy use is unlikely to lead to physiological reliance and only moderately likely to lead to psychological reliance. Hence, users are quite unlikely to get addicted.